And immediately upon news of the explosions in Boston, we fully mobilized the New York City Police Department's vast counterterrorism operations because we thought there was a possibility that they could be a related attack here. We now know that that possibility was, in fact, all too real. Last night, we were informed by the FBI that the surviving attacker revealed that New York City was next on their list of targets. We don't know if we would have been able to stop the terrorists had they arrived here from Boston. We're just thankful that we didn't have to find out that answer.
That, of course, Mayor Bloomberg during a press conference earlier today, making the unsettling admission that we may not have been prepared for the alleged Boston bombers if they, in fact, chose to bring their trail of terror to New York City. I want to bring Andrew back in. He's got more on this.
And you know, Rich, this information is pretty frightening if you think about it. Today, investigators said the suspects were headed here next. And on Capitol Hill today, tough questions for the White House and the FBI on whether they had overlooked warning signs about the older Tsarnaev brother.
It appears Boston was just the beginning. Authorities now say Dzhokhar and Tamerlan Tsarnaev had their sights set on New York City. Mayor Michael Bloomberg says Dzhokhar had visited Times Square several times and believed he was planning to set off more bombs there.
New York City remains a prime target for those who hate America and want to kill Americans.
Investigators say Dzhokhar originally said that he and his older brother planned to go to New York to party, but then he changed his story.
The two brothers had at their disposal 6 improvised explosive devices. One was a pressure cooker bomb, similar to the 2 that had exploded at the marathon. The other 5 were pipe bombs.
Their plan went off track, authorities say, when the owner of the vehicle they carjacked managed to escape. This morning, the FBI searched a landfill in New Bedford, Massachusetts, looking for discarded packaging or homemade bombs the suspects may have used for practice. A stash of fireworks was discovered yesterday in Watertown, and officials believe Tamerlan planned to use the gunpowder from them to make explosives. As new details emerged, some members of Congress are frustrated that the FBI and CIA were warned by the Russians 2 years ago about Tamerlan becoming an Islamic radical.
Boston is becoming, to me, a case study in system failure.
Dzhokhar's parents could arrive in the U.S. any day now. During a press conference in Russia, his mother said she can't believe Tamerlan would carry out a terror plot.
He was really nice and very, he never rejected anyone Americans just because they are Americans.
Authorities now say that Dzhokhar, the surviving brother, stopped cooperating with interrogators after he was read his Miranda rights on Monday. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. We're now joined on the phone by Pat DeMauro. Pat's a former FBI agent and former inspector in charge of the FBI's investigation of 9/11. He's currently the chairman and CEO of Global Risk and Investigative Diligence. It's a firm specializing in investigative work and security counseling. Pat, as always, thanks for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Richard.
Your reaction when you heard the news from the press conference from both the mayor and the police commissioner that New York might have been next here. Talk about the differences from pre-9/11 New York to now New York. Would we have been more prepared if somebody like 2 lone wolves, if you will, just decided to come here with improvised devices?
Well, I think the security in New York is probably the model for what the rest of the country should be. But that doesn't mean that Dzhokhar would not have been successful in carrying out his mission here, too. Remember, this was a lone wolf. He was not on the, with his brother, of course, not on the radar screen. So it's possible he could have carried out those attacks. Now, in New York City, when they have the special events, most times you won't see any garbage cans on the street. They clear those out. So, you know, where they leave packages, it may have been noticed. There's a lot more cameras in New York City. But still, it's possible they could have been successful.
You talked about the FBI, and you may have heard what Lindsey Graham and other lawmakers have said, but Lindsey Graham, most notably the senator of South Carolina, saying that what happened in Boston is Exhibit A and system failure on the part of the FBI and the enforcement agencies. What's your reaction? Is it Monday morning quarterbacking, or are there enough signals that shouldn't have been missed that were?
Well, you have to wait until all the facts are in. Obviously, the Russians did not provide information. They inquired as to the individual, but they didn't provide any information back for the FBI to act upon. Now, was that escalated to higher authorities in the FBI to reach out for Russian counterparts to see if they could have obtained that information? There's a lot of facts here that we need to to understand before we start second-guessing.
You know, we've talked about the issue of torture and the debate post 9/11 about where its role should or shouldn't be in acquiring reliable intelligence. Leaving that aside, though, for a moment, the issue of Miranda. And today, obviously, Miranda was withheld from the younger Tsarnaev brother, but once he was read his rights, he clammed up. Is this much ado about nothing in this debate, or do you think it's significant where rights should start and stop for an American citizen accused of being involved in acts of terrorism against his home nation?
Look, it's a significant issue and one that needs to be monitored closely. There's been a lot of misinformation. Many news reporters have been identifying the underwear bomber in Boston, saying that it was mishandled by the FBI, that they should not have advised him of his rights. The way that it was handled in Boston by the special agent in charge, Andy Arena, who I worked with when I was in the FBI, they did it exactly the way they should. What you're trying to do when you question an individual, and what they did in Detroit, was to question him for intel purposes. The reason for that is you're concerned that there may be another device or another situation that is going to cause death or possible injury to other Americans. So your first priority is to prevent another situation from taking place. So you obtain that information on the basis of intel. Once you're done collecting that intel and you feel comfortable, then you can go forward and Mirandize the individual and then see if the individual will speak. There's also a lot of misunderstanding about what Miranda really is. The only time you really need to Mirandize a U.S. citizen is when that individual is in custody. Now, in the Boston situation, he was in custody. So they needed to interrogate him to get any intel to try to save further lives. Once he's Mirandized, his right to stop talking if he wishes and to obtain counsel. So the information that he provides prior to being Mirandized, more than likely, in fact, probably 100%, will not be able to be used in court. Once he's Mirandized, if he offers that information again, then those statements can be used.
And let's be honest, they weren't looking to get information to lead to a conviction. They were looking, as you said, to try and stop a maybe imminent attack on the U.S. if it was in the offing. There's more than enough evidence, one would think, here to secure a conviction, regardless of whatever they found out before they Mirandized him. Pat, thank you very much. I appreciate a few minutes.
You're welcome, Richard. Take care.
You too. You know, today I hear it, and it's just a reminder, New York is always in the crosshairs when you're talking about terror. Nobody needs remindings really of that, but still unsettling when you hear two, obviously, whatever adjectives you want to call these two guys, pipe bombs and a pressure cooker, and they're heading down to New York. And thank goodness for happenstance and carjacking gone bad, and it never gets this far south. But nonetheless, you know, when I heard the information today, I did a double take.
You know, Richard, whether it's 93, 2001, or tonight, in terms of hearing the possibility and considering what these guys did in Boston, it's quite unsettling for the average citizen. Whenever I'm in Times Square a lot, and when you look at the tourists from around the world, it's almost like one can of sardines, if you will, with human people. And the one good thing about this, though, that I will say, the NYPD has become so good. Yeah. They have the Joint Terrorism Task Force and so on, but they have agents and police officers that would look like any one of us, and you would never know it.
There are 20 different nations or something,
and you would never know it looking at these guys. You know, so they do a very good job.
I kept thinking about the story surrounding the would-be Times Square bomber when there was a street vendor who saw what was happening. I mean, if we had, first of all, it would have been both brothers together because it would have happened before the shootout in Watertown. But if we had any idea that there were the two brothers might have been heading this way,
do you feel after Boston and how it was handled, more or less safe in America?
I mean, right now I feel less safe because it's just 2 weeks ago. You know, it's so recently in our memory. But, you know, I think I feel about the same, where we're going to be an occasional target from time to time, and you do what you can to prevent it.
I did think the response, though, was amazing, and how the idea that you can get a whole city to stay indoors if you just tell them to, I think we overestimate just how
I don't know
really
if you could
amazing
get New York
that was.
City to stay indoors for a day.
You
I
would.
don't know.
I hear you,
don't know.
but I think you're right. All right, we take a break here. And when we come back, we turn to politics, but kind of, sort of. We're going to go to Texas, and that's where George W. Bush's presidential library was dedicated today. And it wasn't right and left, yet all living U.S. presidents converging in the same place to honor the man today and put politics kind of aside for the moment. We'll have more on that after this.